Welcome to the WriteAngles Conference. It makes us happy when we get together. So WriteAngles started in 1987, which is before some people in this room was born. This is the second year that Straw Dog Writers Guild has hosted the conference. And I would like to take a second just to thank all of our volunteers who've made it possible, particularly Ellie Mirapol. She was the driving force bringing it back. Straw Dog Writers Guild is almost entirely volunteer run. And what we're doing here, bringing writers together in community to learn and to share, that's one of the fundamental goals of the organization. I also want to thank our major sponsors, Diversified, Markham Nathan Fund for Social Justice, the Community Foundation, and Bill Newman. Our community has been so incredibly generous. They allowed us to provide a scholarship to anyone who asked for a scholarship so that everyone could attend this conference, and we're really grateful. You might have noticed that the 18th is a little bit busy this year. So obviously, we all came to the conference. It's also the second No King's Day protest. So at lunch at 12:30, a group of people who want to show their support for the protest are just going to go downstairs in the front of the building. Some people have hats, some people have signs. You can just bring yourself if you want to go and show solidarity. But do make sure you take some pictures and post those just so we can show the breadth of the movement if you're participating. I do want to note that this is the 15th anniversary of Straw Dog Writers Guild. And we have some of the original founders. Could we just have the founders and near founders give us a little wave? Yeah. So these women, they looked around our valley and they saw that we were missing something. And they brought together a community that is based on support, not competition. And I'm really grateful for their support of writers for 15 years. I also want to take a moment to note that we lost a member of our community. So we were so sad to hear about the death of poet, author, and social activist Jennifer Martelli. Everyone in this room can and should submit to the WriteAngles Journal. You can find information about it on the WriteAngles Conference website. And it's open for submissions for another month, so you have a whole month to get your work together. I really want to stress, especially in this moment, that the Guild and WriteAngles believes in the power of the written word to affect change. Our words are powerful, and we should use them. And with that in mind, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, poet and essayist Franny Choi. Franny's books, which is for sale on that back table right there, The World Keeps Ending and the World Goes On, and Soft Science, which is a winner of the Elgin Award for Science Fiction Poetry. Their writing has appeared in the New York Times, the Atlantic, the Paris Review, the Nation, and other places, and they've been awarded the Ruth Lilly and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Fellowship and a Holmes National Poetry Prize from Princeton University. Currently, they're at work on an essay collection about Asian robot women, forthcoming from Echo, which I'm really excited about. And just to prepare a little bit, I read some of the poems from this book, and Franny builds worlds, pierced my heart, and spread the taste of their poetry on my tongue. These are rich, wonderful poems. Let me please introduce Franny Choi.
Hello. Thank you, Morgan. Thank you, everybody who has made this possible. Thank you all for being here. I'm Franny. It's nice to be here with you on this weirdly cold morning. I'm going to read from a thing that I've written. This is a terrible title for anything, but this is what I've gone with. So, all right. So to begin, I will read a poem by the Palestinian-American poet Noor Hindi. It's called "Fuck Your Lecture on Craft, My People Are Dying." Colonizers write about flowers. I tell you about children throwing rocks at Israeli tanks seconds before becoming daisies. I want to be like those poets who care about the moon. Palestinians don't see the moon from jail cells and prisons. It's so beautiful, the moon. They're so beautiful, the flowers. I pick flowers for my dead father when I'm sad. He watches Al Jazeera all day. I wish Jessica would stop texting me Happy Ramadan. I know I'm American because when I walk into a room, something dies. Metaphors about death are for poets who think ghosts care about sound. When I die, I promise to haunt you forever. One day I'll write about the flowers like we own them. My question today, and the question that has been on my heart every day since the beginning of the genocide in Gaza, since the election of Trump, since Ferguson, since the invasion of Iraq, since the beginning of my politically aware and impossibly American life is, what use is writing right now? This poem was, I think I need to note, was also written in published in 2020, before the beginning of the genocide in Gaza, before October 7th. And so I think that the question remains, though it is a terrible question, what use is a poem in a time of genocide? I hate this question. I hate the terms that it sets up, how it pits these two things against each other as if they could ever be equal in power. The richest military in the world against an art form, any art form, really, but especially one that is so simultaneously disinvested from. Poetry, we are told, doesn't sell. And as invested with nearly supernatural power, poetry will save us. Poetry will save our lives. I am so tired of defending literature, and yet today, again, I find myself having to defend it from myself, from the question that won't stop arising in me each time I sit down to write. What use is a poem, a story, a piece of creative nonfiction, as people are snatched from street corners and kitchens? What use is literature in a time of fascism and war? As I speak, around 2,500 cities around the country are planning or setting up for or beginning No to King's Day protests. The one in Northampton starts at 11:30. What does our work here have to do with what happens there? Fuck your lecture on craft, my people are dying, writes Noor Hindi. Poems are bullshit, writes Amir Baraka, unless they are teeth or trees or lemons piled on a step. If we piled everything we've ever written into the middle of this room, would all of it amount to the physical sharpness and undeniability of even a single tooth, a single lemon? How many poems does it take to keep one blade of grass from dying? W.H. Auden writes, poetry makes nothing happen. Nothing, nothing, flaccid as a gerund, I once wrote in a poem, which only made possible more nothing. But literature has the power to move people, you might say, and you would be right, of course. It can be a tool to move the masses, one of our most brilliant such tools. I've read poems at rallies and city halls and felt the current of electricity the words ignited in the crowd. I've wept as Rafat Al-Arir's poem, If I Should Die, was read at protests, at teach-ins and fundraisers. If literature is a tool, you can measure the tool's success by the decibel. You can measure it in likes and votes and dollars raised and QR codes scanned. What is a political slogan like "Nothing about us without us" or "Black Lives Matter" if not a tiny poem, a concentration of language so exacting that it cuts through the chatter, gets lodged in your ear, briefly throws the world into sharp relief? Our lives are legislated through language. Of course, interventions on the plane of language have the power to reshape our world. Every major social movement of the modern era has had its writers and its artists. In the mid-19th century, when some of the oldest houses in this town were being built, abolitionist newspapers across the country published poems by writers like Henry Wadsworth Longfellow and Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, alongside essays and news and abolitionist tracts. Frederick Douglass's famous speech, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July," ends with him reading a poem by William Lloyd Garrison. Here's one of the middle stanzas, one of my favorite stanzas in that poem. God speed the hour, the glorious hour, when none on earth shall exercise a lordly power, nor in a tyrant's presence cower, but all to manhood's stature tower by equal birth. That hour will come to each, to all, and from his prison house the thrall go forth. But if literature is a tool, it is also a tool that can be used by those in power just as easily as it can be used by those who resist. More easily, in fact, because that's how power works. At the height of the Chinese Cultural Revolution, when the Red Guard made piles of books in courtyards to burn them, when intellectuals were beaten to death and paraded through the streets wearing dunce caps and sent to rural labor camps, there were plenty of poets writing odes to the Communist Party. In my class at Bennington, I'm teaching a class right now called The Poetics of Protest, and we just read and analyzed a few of those poems written by poets at that time, odes to the party. When Japanese American children were incarcerated and sleeping in horse stables during the Second World War, their re-education curriculum included lessons written in rhyming verse. What is Think Outside the Bun, or Stop the Steal, or Make America Great Again, if not a tiny poem, a concentration of language so exacting that it gets lodged in your ear, briefly reconfigures the world according to the interests of our tyrants? So what use is literature in a time, a place where any tool can be co-opted, when any word can be contorted out of its meaning, when we are constantly inundated with language designed specifically to make something happen, that something being to direct our attention, our dollars, our fears in this direction or that? The first time Trump was elected, I had just left Providence, Rhode Island, where I had spent years organizing across the city, sometimes doing anti-deportation or labor organizing, but mostly working on a bill that would protect our community from abuses by the local police. I had moved from Providence to Ann Arbor, Michigan for an MFA program, and was suddenly adrift in a world of workshop, apart from my movement family and the sense that anything that I did mattered. I remember attending an MFA event where someone said that this was a time for asking questions in our writing. And I raised my hand and I said that I disagreed, that I thought this was a time to draw clear lines in the sand, that the time for waffling and equivocating was over, and what we needed right now was certainty. What my people needed, I thought, was weaponry, and I wanted more than anything to be useful. It can feel good to feel useful. Whole realms of human sexuality are premised on the idea that there is great pleasure to be taken from being used. But the problem is this. Once art is merely a tool of politics, it becomes a vessel for ideology, a box that I use to carry ideas of right and wrong. And my job as the artist becomes to make the box so smooth, to pack its contents so neatly that they don't rattle too much in the truck, to make the box easy to open and easy to throw away when you're done. Have you ever tried to write something like this? Something whose foremost fidelity was to the certainty of your idea of what literature should do, what use it should serve? Have you watched the way it topples under the weight of that certainty? Adrienne Rich said, "I can't write a poem to manipulate you. It will not succeed. I can't write a poem from dishonest motives. It will betray its shoddy provenance like an ill-made tool, a scissors, a drill. It will not serve its purpose. It will come apart in your hands at the point of stress. I can't write a poem simply from good intentions, wanting to set things right, make it all better. The energy will leak out of it. It will end by meaning less than it says." I love that. It will end by meaning less than it says. So then how do you write something that isn't neutral, that stands up to face its time, that takes the stakes of our moment seriously, but that does so without becoming a lawn sign or a cardboard box, an ill-made tool? Poems are bullshit, wrote Baraka, unless. Here's the thing about that poem, Black Art by Amiri Baraka. I keep trying to use it for my arguments, to teach it in my classes, but it is actually too weird. It resists utility. So here is a few more lines. There's quite a lot of language for 9 a.m. at a conference, but here we are. Fuck poems, and they are useful. Would they shoot, come at you, love what you are, breathe like wrestlers, or shudder strangely after pissing? We want live words of the hip world, live flesh and coursing blood, hearts, brains, souls splintering fire. We want poems that kill, assassin poems, poems that shoot guns, poems that wrestle cops into alleys and take their weapons, leaving them dead with tongues pulled out. What is a poem that shudders strangely after pissing? And what's so useful for the revolution about that? And then the more unsettling question, do I want a poem that kills? Do I want a poem that shoots guns? There's another way that this poem resists me. The parts outside of what I've excerpted here are full of very troubling language. Incendiary language. There are slurs against women, Jews, Irish and Italian people, sex workers, queers, plus more than one use of the N-word. This makes this poem, which I love, hard to bring into rooms like this, and very uncomfortable to teach, though I love so much of it. Though so much of this poem, this unteachable poem, has shaped the way I have thought about teaching, about what it means to write courageously and dangerously. It is a dangerous poem. I'm pretty sure it's not mine. But the surprise of the poem, the mystery, and yes, the difficulty, the indelicacy, the mess of it, is what keeps me returning to it. Not throwing it into the recycling once it's finished, but planting it, watering it, watching it grow, watching my relationship to it change over the years. Heroes and martyrs are useful, but all of our lives are stranger, messier, more complicated, more troubling, and more alive than any hero narrative. What use is literature in a time like this? What is it for? James Baldwin wrote that the purpose of art is to lay bare the questions which have been hidden by the answers. Grace Lee Boggs said that these are the times to grow our souls. Both, I think, are versions of this. Literature, I've been thinking recently, is a place where we recommit to life itself, life in its dangers and mysteries and moments of excruciating tenderness. It is where we practice feeling briefly alive and confront the stakes of that, the commitments that must follow if we are to believe that we are alive in this moment. Useful language makes us vessels for the movements of power and capital, by which I mean it makes our attention valuable. Literature makes our attention our lives. Literature is powerful precisely because it makes nothing happen. Unrestricted by the realities and compromises of policy work, it is where we dream messily and rigorously of a future without war, without militarized borders, without carceral systems like prisons, police, and ICE. It is where we experience briefly the feeling of freedom and carry it to the rest of our lives. Poetry makes nothing happen, wrote Auden. Usually people just excerpt or quote that part of the poem, but that's not even the full line of the poem. The full line is, for poetry makes nothing happen, it survives. I hope that during this conference, you will write and read and hear difficult work that resists you, work that confounds you, work that compels you into new questions and new responsibilities, work that reminds you of what it felt like to catch your mother in one of those times when she was of no use to anyone but herself, coming in from a walk, rubbing lotion into her feet. I hope you write or read or hear something that feels as fleeting and life-encompassing as that. Something tender that reminds you what you are fighting for, that survives. And then I hope you leave here in the spirit of the line by the poet Araceli Skirmay from her poem The Black Maria, from her book of the same title, one of my favorite lines of poetry ever, which I return to as a friend, as a plant I water, as a North Star. And so to tenderness, I add my action. I will end, I think, with just a few poems for you from this book that Morgan mentioned so kindly. The first is called Aaron Says the World is Upside Down. It was written in 2020 while locked in my apartment and watching the uprisings in Minneapolis, the city where I was born. Aaron says the world is upside down. And it's true. The cops are shooting rubber bullets at even the blonde journalists now. The Target is on fire, and the Wells Fargo's shining face kicked in by white boys with gas masks and hammers trying to jumpstart their war. And yet, the upside-down world is also, by definition, the same world. Like the map that hung in the hallway of the house where I lived 3 or 4 lives ago, Argentina at the top, Greenland kissing its toes. It was a metaphor, someone explained, for seeing things another way. So, yes, if it is true that another killer cops killed another black child's father, another unauthorized chokehold, another no charge again, if once more riot gear, again budget, once again gas station, more flames, more who's to blame gets blamed again, if again and again it is true, it is the same, then it holds that the opposite must also be true. The so-called opposite world of food drop-off stations, of phone trees, of bailouts and carry an extra mask, the world of kneeling for a stranger's gift of milk to flush the tear gas, the world of saying a thing in unison, so clear it drills a hole through to the other side of what is possible, so clear and wholly inverted we realize it's been here all along. O kingdom of fire, O kingdom of food, with the same mouth we take your blessings, with the same mouth we pronounce you come. This one is, oh, thank you. It's always unclear what you're supposed to do in between poems at a poetry reading. Do you clap? Do you snap? Do you just take a breath? The answer is that any of those are okay. Any of those are okay. Okay. Prayer for the untranslated testimony. This one I wrote soon after the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation hearings, when I was living in Hamtramck, Michigan. Prayer for the untranslated testimony. Midnight, and I'm sitting on the back steps, looking at the leaves and listening to the sound a boy is making into the night with the peak of his lungs somewhere in my neighborhood. He is stretching the air, and I do not know what it means, this sound. It sounds, I think, like a name. Like the name of my friend Fatima, but with different letters, I think. Or maybe it sounds like a command, a long and desperate spell, which he makes of the air again, and now growing longer as he shouts it. And if I ask my heart, rude translator though it is, to read back the sound, what I hear rippling from the quiet floor of my chest is, let me in, or open it, open it. And now, in my chest's vocabulary, there is also a door. There is also a blue light in the top window and a face that will not appear. And some of my friends I know have names that sound like this. like, I am here, I am here, like, why won't you answer, like, why can't you see me? And they are, mostly, not boys, but do grow long and blue lit at midnight. They are spells, the women I know. And today, a woman sat in front of a panel of men who, I have to try to believe, were too once boys who shivered in the yard. A woman sat and had to say it again and again. It happened, and watch the glass panes of the once boys' faces remain unlit and only echoing back with their short vocabularies. Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? So tonight, reaching up to hold hands with these leaves stretching onto the back steps, I say, please, let the spell grow legs. Let my sisters' names grow long as their hair, long as they need to. Let their names rattle the night air with their incessant lungs. Let the sounds of their names burn blue in the night. Let even their ugliest memories be named after the daughters of prophets. Please, if there is a God named for the humble undersides of these leaves, somehow not yet dead, let the names of my sisters make all the doors on my street fly open. Let every tree sleeping in our chests claw awake and rush out to answer that call. Okay. Here's a list of things that already go past borders. It's called Things That Already Go Past Borders. Trade deals, pathogens, specific passports, particular skill sets, vegetables, car parts, streaming rights, seasonal workers, some insects, certain birds, religion, dialect, music at the right volume, headlights, human remains, wireless signals, all manner of money, of memory, people, in trucks, on trains, on foot, in line, in lines, charging checkpoints, wading waist deep through rivers, clinging to rafts or yawning their way through customs. Sisters, separated for decades, whose faces are as foreign to each other as the faces of the dead. Seeds, drones, prisoners on planes, dictators in motorcades, orders to kill, and longing. Yes, this most of all, the longing of families and the longing of storms. I'll just read one last one. We're going until 9:30, right? So I've got a little bit of time. I think I'll read two more then. I'll read two more. Yeah, this one is called Demilitarized Zone. I tried to imagine, the demilitarized zone between the Koreas, between North and South Korea, is this, 1 kilometer wide stretch. Of course, it's not completely demilitarized. It's full of mines, and military does go in there. But I wanted to write a poem that imagined what would happen if the demilitarized zone just stretched and stretched until it encompassed the whole peninsula. Demilitarized zone. I roll my suitcase through the demilitarized airport. I hand my demilitarized ticket to the demilitarized agent at the gate, who smiles in a demilitarized way, points with an open hand. On the plane, I order a demilitarized orange juice. I look down at the demilitarized mountains of Siberia and imagine walking on them. We land on the demilitarized runway, and the captain's voice over the loudspeaker is demilitarized as he asks us to stay in our seats. In the bathroom, I brush my demilitarized teeth. I get on the wrong demilitarized train and have to plead with the conductor, who does not have a gun. I watch the demilitarized pine trees filter the sun like a ceiling fan. I watch demilitarized cranes land on a lake so bright it makes me blink. The demilitarized conductor bows as he enters each train car. An old woman sits with demilitarized bundles wrapped in pink. At Pyongyang, I stop for demilitarized noodles. The Taedong River is not full of bodies. The sun in the trees makes a noise like ee, ee. The sparrows in the buckwheat fields shout in Bukhan accents and no guns. At Uiju, the platform is demilitarized. The taxi stand is not pockmarked with mines. I buy a demilitarized barley tea, and the shopkeeper hands me my change like she's responsible for me. In the demilitarized record hall, I hand over a slip of demilitarized paper, and the clerk smiles at my accent. "You've traveled a long way," she says, as she leads me to the demilitarized stacks. We find my family's genealogy book. We turn to the last generation recorded before the world ended and our lines split south. I unfold my paper with a list of missing names. The clerk copies the letters as I read them. Together, we demilitarize my family. The sun coming in through the windows says, ah, ah. I'll just read one last one, because my mother is on my mind today. And thank you all for your attention and for being here and for spending a day of your lives really committed to this thing that we do called literature. This one's called Look. My mother, very Catholic, loves that song, "Imagine There's No Heaven." Can you picture it? My mother joining the chorus of her 3 churchless children to croon, "No heaven, no hell, nothing before or after." Above us, only the universe and its borderless yawn. Only the trees who died for my handwriting, history's pollen, fields and field hands I can't stop robbing with money. Today I woke up on still stolen land, then scrolled through the latest debris of people attempting godliness in 100 wrong ways. The room was filled today with light. Filled, you could say, with nothing. No hope, no glory, no such peach as an ethical peach. The minute I started wanting paradise, it leapt from my belief. I'm not good enough to survive not being good. I'm like you, still drooling after a perfect world, even as the stars warble off-key and the oceans rattle with plastics. Imagine, I can't stop saying. Imagine, I beg, when I should have said, look, look. Paradise is both a particle and a wave. You don't have to believe in something for it to startle you awake. Thank you all so much.